If you're a Caribbean immigrant, this will be the most important news you will hear all year. In a shocking escalation of immigration enforcement, the Trump administration has used a centuries-old wartime law to deport criminals to El Salvador despite a federal judge blocking the move. Now, this development has sparked outrage and panic in immigrant communities, especially among Caribbean nationals who fear they could be next on the list. Now, at the center of all this controversy is a highly controversial prisoner transfer agreement between the Trump administration and the president of El Salvador. This was brokered by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And under this deal, the US has agreed to deport convicted criminals, including suspected gang members, directly into El Salvador's prison system, which has gained a reputation for extreme human rights violations. But that's not even the most disturbing part. Now, when a federal judge issued an order to halt the deportations, the Trump administration ignored it, claiming that the deportation flights had already departed. This brazen defiance of the US court system has raised a terrifying question. If the government can override a judge's ruling using a wartime law to deport people, who is to say they won't expand it to other immigrant groups? For the first time in modern history, the US has invoked the Alien Enemies Act, a law originally passed in 1798 that allowed the president to detain or deport nationals from enemy nations during times of war. However, the United States is not at war with El Salvador or any other country. So why is the government using a wartime law to remove criminals? Now, according to immigration officials, the justification is that the criminal organizations are effectively engaging in irregular warfare against the United States. By labeling the gang members as enemies of the state, the government has exploited a legal loophole to push through mass deportations without due process. This is not a routine immigration enforcement. This is a legal test case for something far more dangerous. The moment the government normalizes using wartime powers for deportations, it opens up the door to expanding the list of threats, because today it's convicted criminals, tomorrow it could be anyone they deem a problem. The legal chaos surrounding this deportation order is just as alarming as the law itself. A federal judge issued an order blocking these deportations, ruling that they violated due process. But the Trump administration completely ignored the ruling. According to White House officials, the deportation flights had already taken off before the court order could be enforced, meaning the decision was too late to stop. This is unprecedented. For the first time, an administration has openly defied the courts and pushed through deportations despite a legal ruling against it. Now, what happens when they apply this same strategy to other groups? Could this set the stage for mass deportation of Caribbean immigrants regardless of legal status? Caribbean immigrants have always been at the center of US deportation policies, from the Haitians being deported in large numbers under the guise of health risk in the 1980s to Jamaican nationals being removed at record rates in the early 2000s. History has shown that the US government is willing to remove entire groups when politically convenient. Now, with the legal precedent of the Alien Enemies Act being used for deportations, Caribbean immigrants, even those with legal status, should be very, very concerned. Right now, the law is being used against gang members. But what happens when the government expands the definition to low-income immigrants from high-crime areas? Many Caribbean immigrants live in urban centers, making them easy targets for any such policy shift. The United States already have deportation agreements with many Caribbean countries. If the El Salvador model is successful, it could be expanded to Jamaica, Haiti, or the Dominican Republic. The government has just proved that it can defy a judge's order by deporting people before the legal system can intervene. If a similar deportation policy was applied to Caribbean immigrants, who would stop it? If you or someone is a Caribbean immigrant in the US, it's time to take action. Secure your status right now. If you are undocumented, you need to be seeking legal advice right now. And if you're on temporary protected status or TPS, be aware that these policies are changing very, very quickly. You need to also know your rights. If an immigration officer comes to your house, do not open the door without a signed warrant. You need to also stay silent because anything you say can be used against you. Also, avoid any criminal activity, even small offenses, because minor offenses could put you on a deportation list. Now, under the new policy, past offenses, even decades old, can be used against you. So stay informed and share this information. Immigrant communities in the United States need to be ready before it's too late. This is not just about gang members. This is about a dangerous shift in US policy, one that ignores court rulings, bypasses legal protections, and uses wartime laws against civilians. If it can work for El Salvador, it can definitely be used again. For Jamaicans, for Haitians, for Bajans, for anybody who the government decides does not belong, the Trump administration has set a new standard for deportation. The question is, who will be next?